and welcome once again to another edition of the Modern Farming Podcast, where we strive to make agricultural excellence through education.
We're your hosts, Chris and Tara, and together we're growing knowledge about the world that feeds us.
Thanks, Tara. And today's episode, in the long line of teachers that Green Genes Foundation consults with and works with, we've got another excellent vocational agriculture teacher and advisor for the FFA in his area. His name is Mike McCracken. Welcome, Mike. Why don't you tell us a little about yourself?
Glad to be here, first of all. Thank you for this opportunity. A little backdrop about me. My dad was a former teacher, and we started, I was born in Springfield, Minnesota. Little background on that. So if you ever watched Little House on the Prairie, so they talked about Sleepy Eye and New Ulm and all that kind of stuff. That's the area I was grown in. So it's very much an agriculture background. Everybody did it. Everybody's grandparents did it. We moved down here in 1982. My dad became the advisor in Avon Park High School, which is about 15 miles north of here. Of course, you're looking at the backdrop between Minnesota and Florida. We totally raise a different variety of fruits and vegetables. Coming down here, all of a sudden you saw a bunch of orange groves. Hopefully we'll get an opportunity to talk about how that has changed over the course of the years. And then it was just one of those things. My father pushed me in a lot of different directions. As a younger student, I sat there very interested in the FFA. It gives you a lot of opportunities to grow as an individual. I spent a lot of time participating in a lot of contests, showing a lot of livestock. But back in those days, a lot of kids did. It didn't have the negative connotation when you talk about farming as much as it does today. So as we advanced, or I advanced in the program itself, I had the opportunity to serve as a state FFA officer. Basically what that is you're acting as ambassador for the program. There is, each summer we elect a president and secretary, and then there are 6 different vice presidents in charge of an area. One of the really cool things that I had an opportunity to do is we have what's called the creed. And basically it is a value or a statement that was written by Ian Tiffany back in the 30s. And it talks about how we perceive agriculture in general. And so I served as a national delegate that year, and we were talking about changing the words and changing the dynamic. Because what has happened since my early time when I was starting out in 82, compared to getting closer to the 90s, the fewer and fewer kids wanted to go into the agriculture realm. We always talk about why cows, saws, and plows, and how I don't really fit that lifestyle wearing boots and a cowboy hat. And so I sat there along with a couple other people, and I would go into inner city Miami and try to say, hey, you need to be a part of FFA. And they weren't buying it. So I was one of the delegates that was actually voting for change, but was really cool as a national delegate. We decided to keep the name the same. And like farming, no matter if we're, the old traditional type of farming or the new modern day type of farming, when you get into hydroponics, aquaponics, or anything like that, it's still farming in general. And like we are some of the individuals that risk the most. So as I went to the University of Florida, was very involved in the University of Florida, serving on the College of Agriculture board, served as president of that. I also served on the Student Senate, was very involved with different activities. I was the marketing director of the world's largest pep rally for the Gator Growl. Well, back in the day, it was pretty cool. Coming out of college, my dad decided that he wanted to build the operation a little bit more. So in high school, I actually raised about 300 replacement heifers, dairy heifers. So I would get them at 2 days old, raise them up to about 500 pounds, and then sell them back to the dairy. In addition to that, we had a sign grove, which is a registered citrus grove, where people would come and take budwood off our trees. We dabbled in blueberries. And then I just did a lot of other things, such as raising exotic birds, which I was the largest supplier of cockatiels in the United States. There was a group out of California and a group out of Florida. I was larger than both of them combined. So it's just one of those things. I never did just one thing. And like, hopefully I'll have a chance to like explain why it has really important to not only, be well at what you're doing and like try to make the right decisions, but to diversify, especially in agriculture. You never know what's going to happen. Like in 2008, when we had that really bad economic change, and that changed my course of action for a very long time. And then at the end, when I was getting closer to in the farming where citrus became an issue, with all the greening and citrus canker back in the day, we transferred over to hydroponic towers, and we saw the idea, the premise was no bending, no kneeling. Come over and pick your strawberries. And so we got into that and realizing that strawberries really didn't provide you the guaranteed funds. So I view strawberries as a luxury good. So I went into more of a you pick salad bar. So I got into raising more lettuce and mustard greens, collard greens, things like that, and knowing what your target audience was. So I've been doing that for quite a few years. Unfortunately, my dad passed a few years ago, and I was trying to get him out of farming and doing this. We were catering to a lot of restaurants. We were doing pretty good, but I just saw his health deteriorating. So I don't want to say I just challenged him to stop. And if he didn't, I was going to go back go into teaching like he did. And that was about 10 years ago where I transformed coming into teaching, and then trying to like help our younger kids understand what agriculture is all about and the importance of it.
So now you're a teacher. Tell us where you're teaching and how long you've been there. You said about 10 years?
Oh, well, so I live in Highlands County, and it's kind of one of those things that you got to meet the teacher administration and develop that bond. I felt like I had a better chance going to Polk County. And if you know Polk County, it's a lot of school districts, very supportive of the agriculture industry. I had an opportunity to like actually establish a new chapter. It was right near the I-4 27. It's called Citrus Ridge, the Civics Academy. And I got a chance to go up there where it was truly house to house. There was no farmland. And we actually got our hands dirty a little bit. We had a greenhouse out back. I was able to bring some animals in. We did several contests. It was just a really good experience for those kids. After a couple of years, I transferred over to Auburndale, which is more of a rural community. And so I got to see the contrast of, the two different types of individuals. And it was very interesting also to see the difference between a middle school and high school. Eventually, I got to come back into Highlands County and set down my roots. And it really does make a difference if you are in your backyard, your back door where you know the people. And that just gave me even more opportunities. Things that I strive more than anything else is to give kids an opportunity. We were talking here today in my class. We have a 3-circle model in the FFA. And it's talking about a well-rounded student. And we want to take what you learn in the classroom. And again, it's not just the materials nowadays. A bookwork is a lot of times is outdated, but just to give a kid an idea of how to find the resources and determine who do I contact? What do I contact? And we do a lot of certifications, which is what some of the schools are looking for right now. It's an opportunity for students to test above the classroom setting. Then we promote the FFA, and there's 3 standards that we preach on this, 3 goals. And that is personal growth, career success, and leadership. We do preach the leadership aspect a lot. And then we do the SAE, which is, again, a chance for kids to learn about a project, whether it is a HOG, which is entrepreneurship, or to work for somebody, which is placement, or even more importantly, going with more of the educational side where you go into the resources where you're reviewing, you're researching, and that kind of background, which comes into play. We are actually working with Farm Ed right now, which is a self-contained unit. So the kids are saying, hey, if we add more light, if we take a little bit of chemical off there, we literally have control exactly what's being put into the plant. So the kids are having an opportunity. Doesn't make a difference if it's controlled versus outside. So we do a lot of experiments that way. So we've done very well with our FFA. One of my greatest things that I've taught at the school is that how kids should study. So a lot of teachers spend countless hours after school and trying to drill into them that they have to do it a certain way. What I've developed here is the kids are taking upon themselves to go home and to practice and not just see, if I'm looking at a citrus tree, not just seeing just the fruit, but like, what do the leaves look like? what time does it come into season? And then we had a farm agribusiness management team, which is they look at basically it's what I did in college, which is food and resource economics. It's business and reading like the balance sheet of, profits and loss and assets, liabilities. And they were actually the high individual team, first place overall in the state of Florida this year in middle school. So we're developing a lot of cool things down here. We do try to get the kids outside from time to time. We got a greenhouse, FNGLA, Florida Nursery Landscape Growers. Sorry, I probably butchered that all up. But they have been very supportive, donating some plants so the kids get a chance to actually get their hands dirty and to grow some perennials. We are going to go in. We're doing some Farm Daddies. I don't know if you're familiar with that company. They're more of like a grow box situation back in the day. So what we're trying to do is to create a lot of different ways where the kids can see if I do it one way versus like raised beds versus in the ground versus in a grow daddy versus self-contained, the hydroponic towers. We're trying to get them all different areas because what at the end of the day is happening is that we are getting away from the family farm. Yes. And our ancestors, where you could go to grandpa's house and go to the farm and we, see a cow or, grow some crops. Like we're not seeing that anymore. Unfortunately, in Florida, the citrus groves are, I had to sell mine off for a couple of different reasons, but one of the things is like when they stop producing, somebody comes in and offers you a bit of money for the land, it's hard to say no. Mm-hmm. And as soon as we say, sure, let's sell, we don't get the ground back. And at the end of the day, there's country songs out there right now, is buy dirt. And it's true. Like you have to make sure that we maintain that property. Grandfather did it. It's now passed it down to dad, which dad, has a couple kids, 3 or 4 kids. He all of a sudden passes away. And then the grandkids decide they don't want the land anymore. They want the money. And all of a sudden, his generation worth of work is now gone. And we have to sit there and try to figure out how we can make it, right again. There's a lot of cool things in agriculture that's out there. And I imagine you guys got a couple questions for me. So I'll quit rambling. So.
No, that's okay. I'm interested in a lot in the school programs. So you're at, is it Hillgasalt? Is that your school? Did I say
okay,
right?
Hillgastat. Gestadt. And so Hill was one of our former school board members, and Gestadt was, I think, the marching band, the first one that created the marching band. So that's a little background on that. We have about 700 students at the school, and we are a 6 through 8 school.
Okay, so as a middle school, so you're working with middle school agricultural stuff with your kids.
That is correct. Typically, they range in the age of like 12 to 15.
I was really interested. So you're doing some certifications with them. Are those like high school or middle school type certifications, or are those like state level type certifications?
Well, it depends on who you ask. So there's a couple companies out there. ICEV is one of the companies. They're more nationally known. They put out certifications like Ducks Unlimited. They will put one out in equine. I know they got a new plant one that's coming out right now. There's an animal science. And then there's a company called AEST, and they are Florida based, but they're actually in Louisiana and Michigan, I believe. All of them give different tests. Like AEST actually has a drone one. There's one in forestry. There's one in natural resources. There's one in animal science. And how these are broken up and how I determine who gets to take what is there's a couple basic ones. So there's one called systems, and it's divided up into 10 different categories. You need to know some questions on beef industry. You got to know some in the swine industry. There's one in poultry. There's one in nursery and landscape, vegetables, as well as insects and diseases, beneficial and pests and all that kind of stuff. It talks about animal welfare and animal rights. Okay, so I'm taking you guys outside. Sorry about this.
That's okay.
Okay, so as we were talking about certifications, it's a way that it's not required by the school itself. It is the students that have an opportunity to go in there and to show mastery on a subject. So the systems exam is like I teach foundations class, and the way I always describe it is if I'm building a building, you need to know the terminology. You have to know like what certain things mean, and like you have to know the different breeds. You need to know just basic understanding. Ducks Unlimited talks about different types of biomes and wetlands and why they're important to ducks, and be able to identify things. That's to me more like a middle school to ninth grade level. But as they advance in the high school levels, they're going to go into more like the tech. They're going to go in biotechnology. They're going to go into all these, and we call those specialist exams. Those are ones that are going to be the ones where people are looking for jobs are going to say, yes, we want you to, have that. High schools want the students to have it. It's not a requirement yet. But when you go in for like even ABAC, if you have one of these certifications, they'll actually say, hey, you took that test. I'm going to say that is worth one of our college classes. So they're going to give you college credits for that. In addition, there's a lot of scholarships that are available when you take those exams.
Awesome. So you told us a little about your schooling and your career, and I definitely want to hear some more about the classes you teach and what you offer your kids. But I kind of wanted to get a background on you with you and your family. Can you tell us some personal stuff?
Absolutely. So I've been married for, 22, 23 years. Met her at the University of Florida. So she is actually a true Gator fan. She was actually born at the UF hospital up there. I have 3 kids. One is adopted. The 2 are biological. And the biggest thing is that as we had this, at the beginning, they were all like, oh, what do you mean I have to cut the ends off green beans to go sell them to one of the local restaurants? And what do you mean I got to go pick blueberries and strawberries? And I was always forced to help my dad growing up when we were in Minnesota. And like, I did that to my own kids. Hey, there's a water leak. Go out there and fix it. And I joke about that all the time. But now that my kids are getting older, they all understand how much, like, not only money that I saved them because they can all do it, but also just the fact that there's so many people that can't. So I got one son. He's a sheriff, or not a sheriff. He works in the sheriff's office in Gilchrist County. And one of the best things he's ever done is he went through the AEST. They have like agricultural law where, if that animal is unfit, like what do we need to do to it? And so he's traditionally keeping in the agricultural field. He bought a house recently, he had to redo the whole irrigation. He understands how to do that. He knows how to put a fence in. And then my other 2 sons, one has kind of like gone the college route. He got his AA, but then he started working for a guy with a gate company and being able to use the right type of tools to put things together. And my last one is actually an electrician. He went for like one semester. He's like, Dad, says I can, and all the kids are really smart. They made straight A's and that was never a problem. But we got into more of the, hey, do you understand? Like you could probably earn more money going down the trade school route than if you were to go more into the classroom. Because at the end of the day, if you look at how much college costs, it almost puts you back quite a bit. So he's working with a local electrician that is not only working in houses, but they're also working in major industries where he's learning not only the agricultural side, he's also learning the construction side, and also they allow him opportunity to go into the homes. So when he's done with that company in 5 years, he can actually go in, take the test, and now all of a sudden he can start his own business. By the time he's 30, he's going to be wrapping this thing up, and he's going to be, probably have more money in his back pocket than I will ever see. I mean, that's where we're headed. Like the kids need to have a skill set.
Right. And teaching them very young that they have to go help and help with everything that needs to be done is so valuable, like you just said.
Yeah. I'm not going to tell somebody how to raise their kid. Well, from time to time, I kind of like recommend certain things. But, I sit here in my class and we were putting a bench together. And I said, all right, go over there and grab, the star bit and like, let's take these screws and put them in. And they grabbed a nail. And I'm like, I said the screws. And they're like, what's the difference? And so like things as we get away from, where parents have more time to explain, I don't know, the things I say are common sense. I know that comes across wrong, but the things that we were taught as a young kid where we sat down with our parents and built something, or, on the farm where we had to change the irrigation. those are just things that are not being taught to these kids. So when I said, okay, we're going to drill the screw, and they're like, seriously, you're going to let me just do that? I'm like, it's a battery operated drill. It's cordless drill. Yeah, just screw it in. And to see their faces of that moment where they're actually having the opportunity to do something like that, it goes a long ways. And like, I hear from the parents, you let my kid use a saw? And I'm like, yes. And they're like, was that safe? And I'm like, we use all precautions. And I said, you got to teach them at some point, because, you look at an electrician, for example, if they step outside their door, you're spending $125 just for them to walk out the door. And then if you can change a plug, or, sometimes the GFI, where you just have to hit the button, where a lot of people don't know about that button, you just press it and reset it. That could be costly to some of these people. So, I'm thinking of things, how to, a leaky toilet. Those are all things that we can teach the kids in the classroom that can go a very long ways and help them out later in life.
That's very, very true, and very good attitude with your kids at school as well. I'm assuming that's you've kind of gotten it from your home, and then with your children, and then bring it into the school. So what do you see as something that could change for the better with schools to promote this even further? Do you have any ideas or anything that you'd like to see implemented?
Absolutely. So when I took the job here 3 years ago, one of my biggest things is I said, we have to have the support of the administration. It all starts there. We always view like PE, agriculture, as that class that you drop students in. And not really viewing the bigger picture. Like, like I know a lot of people say it like, hey, chocolate milk comes from a brown cow, and like things like that, where you joke about it and you laugh, but then you sit there and you really ask the kids that question, and they do give you that answer. So I've been very fortunate to work with my admin and say, hey, I need some of the better kids. We are going to do not only teach them hands-on skills, but we're going to get them into where they can take a state exam and pass it. We last year, in just my class alone on those certifications, we had over a 91% pass rate, and we passed over 268 certifications.
Awesome.
And that doesn't seem like a lot, but most middle schools do about 10 a year. Yeah. And so what's happening is that we are teaching these kids how to perform, and also how to limit the amount of stress. So we talk about testing strategies, and because they put those good kids in our class and blend them with some of the other students, we're seeing our test scores at our school significantly rise. So we were traditionally a C school at the school, and now we're like right on the verge of an A. Definitely this next year we will be an A school, and that's just because we're seeing the kids being able to read a question. And that is a direct result of our agriculture department and digital design, just because we're teaching them these certifications and teaching them like not how, like, how to stress. And like Eva does the same basic thing, keep them organized. And those are some of the skill sets that these kids need. And also to have, hands-on, like, and not just say, hey, we're going to go out and mess with the chickens and the cow anymore. It's got to be more than that. And basically it's transforming way agriculture used to be into the modern day new technologies and the things that are going on in today's world.
Yeah, because you've got to keep their interests, right? And we all know what kids are interested in these days: tech.
and it lasts for about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So, well, yeah.
Do you see some that maybe you didn't think were going to be that interested, or surprise you in what takes off? And sometimes it's just introducing them to things and letting them go.
Okay, so like every kid has their niche in the world, right? And so as an advisor, as a teacher, we have to sit down and kind of build that rapport with them and to find out what they want to do. So I have a couple students that, we have a contest called land judging, where you're literally judging the land, the dirt. And they're like, why would I ever do that? And I'm like, are you going to ever own a home? And they're like, yes. And I said, is it important to know where, the place floods or not? And they go, well, my house floods all the time. And I'm like, but why? And so they're starting to see the bigger picture. I will tell you, there's a lot of different ethnic groups, which really comes into play. So some of my students don't speak English. But if you were to go hand them a tool, they all know what they're doing. And again, like, it's not to say anything one way or the other. It's just that how kids are raised nowadays. And so they have an understanding of, hey, the tools, they might not be the same name, but they know how to use them. And they are translating to our kids that don't have that background, whether it's English, Spanish, they're still able to demonstrate how to do it. So it's incorporating all students, and it's not just on one performance. It's literally trying to take a student's skill set and then blend them together to, like, if you have a person that tests well, have them help a kid doesn't test well. If a person grows a plant extremely well, have one that doesn't have that background, and kind of just bring it together as a group. And I always tell my class, you're not really an individual. You're a class, you're a group together, and that's how you're going to be judged.
That's so smart. That's a really cool way of looking at it.
So those are a lot of the hands-on things. What about technological things? Do you have some favorite things that you do with the kids that are really the way they're going today with tech? Do you have any?
Well, I'm not going to say we have that, because funding is always so much fun, if you know what I mean. One thing that we have accomplished in the last couple of years, we actually built a couple chicken tractors. And so my sister is one of the lead economists in the poultry and pork industries. And she's talking about all these farmers and how they're having an issue with disease. And so we did some research, and we built constructed in our classes some chicken tractors, which basically every week the kids go out there and move it to a different location. So what's happening is our eggs are becoming healthier. The birds are definitely a lot more satisfied because they're going to new grass. The disease is like almost non-existent. And so the kids are getting to see it where it's not a free range, because if you go free range, we do have critters in the state of Florida that will come visit. We did have a couple problems with that where the kid left the door open and things did not go well. But at the end of the day, we took those birds that we put them in the chicken tractor last year, and they were the grand champion trio. He got the grand champion rooster. And it was not just because this kid was amazing with raising these birds. I truly believe it's how we do it. So, we got a greenhouse, and like one of the best things we do is like teaching the kids how to irrigate the proper way. And like, is it too much water? It's not enough water. Everybody says, oh, if I kill a plant, I didn't put enough water on it. Sometimes it's just the opposite, where we overwater. And then we got with Farm Ed, like I stated before, and trying to show, like, we're doing science fair, and I actually got 2 of the units, and we're doing a distribution of light. So like one unit is for like 6 hours at 100%. The other one is at 16 hours or something, I think it was 8 and 100%. The other one's 16 and 50%. And like to see which plant would grow the best and why. So all variables are exactly the same except for the amount of light. And so we're trying to, and then next quarter, we'll do a different project with some more. So it is just one of those things. We're trying to introduce them to it. Like I said, we're going to put in some more hydroponics in here. I did bring a couple of my vertical towers, and we water that. It's a gravity feed. So it's basically you have 5 pots high. If you would see in the land where you saw it before, and they would grow down. On my farm, I learned that by the time it got to the 5th one, the nutrients were actually dissipating. And so like you would have to rotate the pots. And then the kids are like, wow, this is a lot of labor. And I was like, yes. And that's one of the things that they're learning firsthand. It's just because one person does it one way, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the perfect way. And so you can read a textbook all day long and them to tell you exactly what's going on. But until a kid goes out and does the experiments and tries new things, it's going to make a difference. And like we take ideas, like on the Farm Daddies, we got a couple of those because I had another teacher that praised them and they were very good for them. So what we're going to do is create a couple of raised beds. We're putting the Farm Daddies in, we're putting some hydroponics in, and we're going to see which one grows the best. And we call it our salad bar, just like I did at my farm, where one kid is going to raise all the lettuce. We're going to put all the seeds exactly in all 3 units. And then we're going to do some tomatoes, and we're going to trellis them up and leave some on the ground. Like, what does it make the difference? Because at the end of the day, farmland, the rural land is gone. These kids are going to be growing in their backyard. And so like, what way are you going to raise it? And some of the kids have already developed their raised beds at their farm or at their house. They put it into landscaping around their house. They're like, why can't I produce this instead of having a landscape plant, having a vegetable plant? And they're seeing the benefits where they just walk out and pick it. Those are just some of the cool things that we're trying down here.
That is an awesome system, awesome program you've got. Very cool. Very cool. Can I ask you a question? So you got the kids at school, they're there, they have to be there, right? They're in school, you got them locked down.
Well, go ahead.
I was just going to say FFA is a little different program. That's a club, you know, and student buy-in can be a little bit tricky, getting people interested in extracurriculars. So do you have any strategies you used as far as FFA goes to keep the students and the kids involved and interested?
Okay, so the state of Florida is pretty intelligent sometimes as far as education. They have decided to start putting the agriculture unit into the elementary schools. A lot of our schools around here in the area will go ahead and do ag literacy. So we'll take some of our students over to the elementary schools and to read to them about the agriculture and like different things. When they get to the middle school, it's really part of my FFA unit to go over to those students and to tell them about the different clubs. Now, in 6th grade, they go to all different electives. So they'll be able to see which one meets their needs. And I do find that to be very important because if a kid doesn't love a program, they don't really do an awesome job with it. So you just kind of get them in 6th grade and kind of teach them a couple things. By their 7th grade year, they're not so shy. And a couple friends will kind of join and then they'll try new things. But even 7th grade, it's hard to coach them into doing. By the time they're in 8th grade, we do these contests, we win the trophies, they get to go on field trips. They love it. And they're like, why didn't I do that to 7th grade? So to give you a name from the past, I'm just calling her name is Braylon. She's in the high school right now. And then I have another girl named Samantha, and Samantha was in my class 7th grade. And we need to transfer a couple students out because of numbers. And there was a business class. And she goes, McCracken, or Mr. McCracken, she calls me McCracken now. And she goes, Mr. McCracken, I want to transfer out. And I looked at her, I said, nope, you're not doing it. She goes, but why? I want to be part of this class. And I said, because I got bigger things for you. Again, sometimes we just got to look at those students. She's very well behaved. She's very smart. She's educated. She comes to school on time, prepared, and looks the part, if you know what I mean. I have so many kids wearing pajamas now. That just drives me nuts. And I sat there, and by the time at the end of her 7th grade year, she goes, thank you so much for not allowing me to do that, like not to transfer the class, because she was already involved in like 3 or 4 different contests. And she goes, I can see where I want to go with this. And by her 8th grade year, she was our president of our chapter. Everything's going great. And like, she's ready to become a state officer like me. Braylon, on the other hand, joined the 6th grade year. I wasn't here that year. Got into 7th grade, got in 8th grade, finally came back in my class because our school decided if she was one of the better students, she needs to be in my class. And she did every contest. Great speaker. But then she got more into like the nursery and landscape, and she got into a lot of these other contests. And she was one of those kids that did land judging. So get to high school. So we're moving this forward. Samantha, the one that I thought would stay with it, she wants to become a teacher. And now, like, the FFA is not as strong. They don't do it the same way I do, where they're going to give you every chance, because I think we have like 20 different types of opportunities to do judging contests. I try to do 18 of them. They might do 3 or 4 up there. And so they're limiting their opportunities. So if you tell a kid no, or there's people that have done it for a few years and you just tell them no, they're going to lose interest and go someplace else.
Right.
Now, Samantha, unfortunately, has decided to go on to other clubs. Braylon is still a part of it. But again, it is when you got to get them young, and then you got to keep them interested. So one of the biggest things you can do, like I said about foundations, you need to teach them the words. You need to give them a chance. It's not all about winning. It's about trying new things, opening their eyes. And once you open their eyes, it's hard to close them.
Yeah, that's true.
But high school, you get a driver's license. You get a job. You might get a significant other. Those are all things, or more importantly in the FFA, you might get that, unfortunately, that people saying things like, oh, you're part of that group, and they start labeling you. So those are the parts of problems you have in high school, where middle school, everybody's still, they'll pick on each other, but at the end of the day, they don't care what group you're in part of.
Yeah. Interesting. Tara, do you have any other questions for Mike?
So one of the questions somebody mentioned to me earlier, and they said, how can we make a difference? And I'm going to talk about one more student. And so she was my 9th grade year at Auburndale, and she was this really quiet, shy girl in the back of the room. And I still say, like, we as teachers or educators or whatever way you want to describe this, we can make a difference in a student's life, right? So I sat there, and her name was Tessa, and very shy. And the halfway mark, she goes, I'm getting out of your class. And I'm like, why? I said, you got bigger things ahead. And again, you got to take a positive approach to these kids. And she wanted to become a lawyer. She's she's valedictorian of the school, just off the chain smarts. But she was always quiet. And I said, we can make a difference on that leadership role for you, like how to voice your opinion and like how to make your stance. And as soon as like she ran for office in ours, then she ran for office in the next year, as far as the grade levels. And then it became something else, and then something else, and something else, still being a part of our group. But what transformed and what changed is she was going to go not agricultural law, but educational law, because her family was in the educational field. All of a sudden, now she's in agricultural law because of like the difference that FFA made. We have so much impact on these kids, and we really don't know it until after the fact. We see little things, we see their happiness, their joy, if their hog sells well, or if they get a ribbon, someone got a White Place ribbon, and I'm like, really? It's White Place? And like, this is the first ribbon I ever received. And so we got to put that all in perspective and just say, give kids the opportunity, try new things, educate them in a way that it's not just book work, and provide anything that we can to build their knowledge. Because at the end of the day, agriculture and a lot of the things that we're doing, the kids just don't have the interest. And so it's our job to kind of build that interest, to spark the interest. And sometimes the easiest way is to get one, and all of a sudden you get the second one. And when you get 2, you go to 4. And when you go to 4, you go to 8. And then everybody wants to be a part of it.
We definitely need more folks like you educating our kids. That's such a great answer and a great story. That was awesome.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's at the end of the day, like technology. I mean, if you look at it this way, drones, cups. I had every kid in my class do the citrus under protection, and we talked about it, and like they had to do a speech, because back in my day, the number one fear was public speaking. And to this day, when I went to a conference, they said, what are the biggest things you're looking for? And they were like, well, we need a kid to be off their phone. I was like, well, that's obvious. They need to show up on time. And like I always had the saying of, early's on time is late, and late is left. So like come a certain way, dress professional, be on time, which means early. And then last but not least, be able to speak, look at the person in the eyes, and like make that you like that. Don't come rehearsed, show the passion behind it. And when you do all that, if you make a kid get in front of the group and speak, even if they're reading off a computer, it doesn't matter. It takes that little bit of fear. And the more times you do it, just like testing, the more the repetition all of a sudden becomes second nature, where they don't think about it as much. And so with that cups, I mean, that's one of the biggest things that we're having in our area down here. And it's increasing our citrus production again, which our county, like that's our highest revenue down here as far as agriculture. So we definitely need it. And we hope to go up to, there's actually a U-pick farm up in by Bartow, I think. It's Mixon's. They used to have the blueberries. They actually opened their doors for U-pick farming.
We just interviewed the owner before you.
Katie Bellaquil.
Yeah. Yes. So her dad, her dad is, I think his name is Jerry Mixon. So back in the day, I heard Mixon Farms. I said, that's blueberries. And actually they transformed over to the whole cups. And it's just such an exciting way. And the kids are like, man, it costs a lot. But I said, again, in order to make money, you got to spend money. And you got to look at the big picture. If we're going to have oranges, then you got to make sure like where are they coming from? And if they, just to say, oh, you can import them nowadays, that doesn't mean that they're not having the same issues down there that we're having. So,
right.
Mhm.
So your kids are going to go do a field trip at the Golden Ridge Groves.
that is my intent. That is I wrote Katie the other day and said, we're needing to make a field trip.
That is so awesome.
Nice.
And one of the things, if teachers are watching, like, it is very important that you actually show the kids. So if you're talking about the dairy industry for the systems exam, if you don't take them to, like, I know there's one in Okeechobee that actually has a rotator where they milk like 72 cows at a time. Like, that's important for the kids to see it. And instead of the traditional way, I always joke, it's no longer, sitting on that three legged stool and taking out a bucket. We can't do that anymore. We have to sit there and be able to show these kids real life situations where they're actually seeing how it's done. And then when you come back, follow it up and ask the questions. Okay, so what technology are you seeing? If you were going out to Indianapolis, they have robotic arms now that actually milk the cows. And so they can figure out this cow is producing exactly to the drop this amount. And is that something where the jobs are going to be? Drones, like, if I can get rid of some labor because labor prices keep going up, I can fly a drone overhead and tell, hey, that area is dry right there. And like human error, like you kind of solve that. But it's not the lower line areas anymore, like the labor production or the labor that we need. We need the higher thinking, like who can actually get the drones to fly right and the robotics to work and all these things come into play, and like the engineers to do the cups. It's not the low paying jobs anymore. This becoming agriculture is becoming that high level advanced technological way of doing things.
Well, I would agree. Our founder, Tara's husband, Matt, would agree. We're working on that. So stay tuned. Green Gene is trying to put together an engineering type program club for ag students, high school and middle. So stay tuned. Great
Fantastic.
idea. We agree. So that's cool to hear. Someone in your field that would be interested in that or sees value in that. So that's awesome.
Yes.
So, Mike, any final thoughts? We're about ready to wrap this up. What would you like the audience to take away from you? Here's your chance to say your final thoughts on agriculture in general.
Well, my first thoughts. First of all, thank you for allowing me to have this opportunity, because anytime we can put out a message in a positive response. So one of the biggest problems that we have is that there's so many negative connotations out there, the negative point of views. Everybody's questioning GMOs. Everybody's questioning everything. And at the end of the day, we have a chance to inform the public of like what we're actually trying to accomplish, knowing that if we do a problem or we have a problem with ours, if we continue to do it, we're only going to, create a problem for us, which our jobs won't be there and we'll lose that area. So again, we're going to use everything to the best results. We're always looking for the next best thing, as far as, new technology. And as far as like the people out there, whether you're in any capacity, if you are a leader, if you are a teacher, if you are anyone out there, voice this not only to the kids, but to the parents, and talk to them about like what truly is at hand. Like, this is our future. Everybody jokes that, hey, we need more lawyers in life. But really what we need is like, oh yeah, we need somebody to fix our AC because we live in Florida and it's hot. We need somebody to, to correct our plumbing or fix our car. And we can't look down on those jobs anymore. And we got to really sit there and say how important agriculture truly is. And then like, as far as teachers and that, make sure you understand that your opinion and what you do and like how you voice this and how you come across will make a difference in a student's life. Whether you have the Tessa or the Braylon and Samantha or whoever it is, just understand if you make a difference in one person's life, they're going to do the same thing. So it's just like, as I said, as you go down and you start to get to that 1 to the 2, then you get to the 4 and then to the 8, you're going to expand. And as soon as you expand and tell people the big picture is going to arrive. And that's what we do. We need to do as agriculturists. We need to be the ones out there in the forefront explaining all the benefits of all these things, and not to have people question everything, Everybody's going to question something, but have a good answer to what they're asking, and inform them, and not to say, just say you're wrong, because that doesn't go anywhere. Because, I think people try to do that. No, we don't do that. That's not really answer. Provide evidence and say we're trying these new things and we're here to make it safer, more, economically and environmentally friendly. And at the end of the day, if you can raise your own vegetables, if you could, I always said on my U-pick farm, if I go out and pick that lettuce right now and I break it off, that's going to be 100% nutritional value. After 3 days, you lose. I always used to say a third. Doctors told me it was more like a half. So if you are 3 days after the picking and you break it off, that's already half. So all these people that are eating healthy and they say, oh, I'm just going to eat a salad. Ask yourself, how old is that lettuce? How long did it take to get to, from farm to table? And when they say there, it says, well, I bought it at Publix. Well, how long did it take to go from the local Publix, from the corporate Publix, the truck shipping it down there? How long did it get? And then how long to get from the farm to that place? And again, you're already past those 3 and 6 days. All of a sudden, you don't have the healthiest food that you keep talking about.
Yeah, that's 100% true, and that's basically the Green Gene motto in a nutshell. So, what a great positive thought to end the podcast on. So, thank everybody for watching. That's about all we have for today.
So
thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Modern Farming. Be sure to follow us, share, and join us again as we grow in the knowledge about the world that feeds us.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. Yeah, have a great day.
You too.